Welcome to episode 15 of Coach's Corner, everybody. I am Coach Justin.
And I'm Coach Ethan.
And today we have a special episode.
I think so.
We're going to be talking about supplements.
Hot topic.
Hot, steamy supplements.
Put it in your body.
The kind of stuff that may or may not benefit you like you think that it does. Or maybe it does. There are some good ones out there.
Absolutely.
So I think what we'd like to do, our intention with this episode today is to parse through what we've known to be true, I think just in our research for this episode, but also, I've been taking supplements of some kind since I was like 16 years old.
Without question. I have a whole cabinet full of bottles and goodies.
Yeah.
Everything from just your regular vitamins to, Eastern herbs and tinctures, Western tinctures, all types of stuff. It's, the bottom line is there's a lot of powerful compounds out there.
And, and then there's also stuff that we want to work for people, like we want to believe works, that unfortunately may not do what you think that it does. And it's interesting, like one thing that an old friend of mine who was a psychiatrist, so a doctor, he said the placebo effect is just as good as any other effect.
Placebo is powerful, but I think there has to be a certain degree. Like placebo, to get somebody to believe truly, I think, is the tricky part for placebo.
Yeah. Right.
There has to be absolute belief, I think.
Yeah, totally. You got to want it. I think that was the point. Like if you believe, like so much of our state, our chemistry, our energy comes from like our mindset.
Without question.
Our inner dialogue. Do we believe this to be true or not? And if the answer is yes, then sometimes we can take something and we can feel so strongly and be so convicted that it's doing something that we start to feel the benefits of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a whole almost separate conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
I've watched an episode where a person was given a fake shot to make them get over their fear of heights. Hence a placebo, and it worked.
Yeah. Especially with shit like that, where it's such like
so psychological. But at the same time, if I take ibuprofen or some other over-the-counter NSAID,
that stuff works.
Yeah. That's not placebo.
God bless the man.
Chemicals.
Who invented ibuprofen. But anyways, all right.
It was found from a root in the jungle.
Was it?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Almost all pharmaceuticals are originally plant-based. Even like prescriptions, all
so
derived from some type of plant origin. Like 90% of them.
A little off topic, but I look at ibuprofen as like, man, like I don't always want to take it, and I try to refrain as much as possible. But when I need it, am I so grateful that it's there, because it can be a lifesaver. Like if you're kind of sick or whatever, maybe you've had too many drinks or you just have a headache, man, that just clears it up unbelievably. But that's not the supplements that we necessarily want to talk about today. We're talking about more exercise, sports performance,
health supplements, snake oil supplements.
Snake oil, perhaps. But I thought we would do a little rundown of just sort of the supplement industry.
Yes.
As a whole.
Right, because if we're really trying to educate our listeners and viewers, I think that's the first important thing to understand, is that it's a wild, wild west out there.
It's so crazy.
Right, so no doubt there are many things, many compounds that can help you. But getting them and making sure they are what they are is a whole different side of the coin. I was reading a thing, like they did a investigation, and I think they found that like over 80% of the supplements sold either don't contain the item they say they are at all,
right? Don't
contain it in the amount, or also contain other things that were not listed.
Totally.
And we were just talking about, since it's not regulated by the FDA, anybody can just package anything and say that's what it is.
It's just so wild. And it's one of those things where unless somebody like actually takes your supplement and runs it under a microscope and actually just identifies what the ingredients are, which of course nobody's going to do. So it's almost like you're only guilty if you get caught. Mm-hmm. And this is where like the placebo, quote unquote, is so powerful, because like if you buy something that you from like, I think a good example would be like the Liver King guy, right? Like, maybe stuff's great, maybe it means maybe it does nothing. We'll never know. But like, you follow somebody, especially nowadays, where we tend to buy things from people that we like and want to emulate.
Trust,
And if
yeah.
they say, I mean, I follow guys on Instagram
Yeah.
that are like very fit for obviously other reasons than like the pre-workout that they're selling. But they're like,
Right.
oh, the only reason I'm like this because I got my Mojo on right now, which is like the name of the pre-workout.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, dude, it has nothing to do
No,
with
you
the
just got a
caffeine
strong
you
worth.
had.
Yeah, you got some nitric oxide boosters in there. You might get a little more pump, but like really,
Yeah.
you're probably like just an animal in the first place.
But yeah, so to your point, it's like there's no hardcore regulation in this country, which is crazy to me. Of all the things that we should regulate, this I feel like should be one of them.
it's wild to think that like I could just put flour in a capsule, throw in a label, and like sell it as whatever I wanted to, and technically nobody would know the difference. It's just crazy.
Unless, yeah, and totally. And I don't know, a million years ago, my ex-girlfriend and I, we decided to do like a protein and green powder. Remember that? A while back, 15 years ago, it was like a protein and green powder blend. And we went through the rigmarole. We got, I say we lightly, it was, whatever, me, but put them in little sample things. And I thought for sure the logical next step was going to be there has to be some sort of like approval or testing. It's like, no, just sell it right on your website and
go for it.
It never ended up going anywhere, but like I remember just kind of feeling like I was doing something wrong. Like I can just send this guy in New York a bunch of this stuff and that's okay. So it's just wild to me that that's a thing, but it is.
So I think that's the first thing to remember is it's Wild West, no regulation, no FDA. So I think before you choose to take any supplement, having some type of a filter of understanding maybe how to choose a good supplement is important. And I think the first one, which is probably a gold standard, is a third-party test.
Definitely.
So you'll see a lot of brands say lab tested, which maybe there's a lab testing it, maybe not.
Maybe it's their own lab.
Maybe it's their own lab.
Maybe they just called their
maybe
experiment
it's
lab.
their buddy, and they're just like, hey, I'm going to send over a supplement. You send me this back. You never really know. So lab tested looks nice. It might mean something, but the one that you can actually count on is third-party lab tested or third-party tested. And so generally I think if a supplement says third-party tested, I would be inclined to trust that that's what's happening. It's what's inside is what they say it is.
Yeah. And I also think that like the more a company is trying to show that they're different, they put more thought and effort into their product.
Right.
To me, there is a certain level of trust that I would have with someone being like, we're different and here's why, and we're third party tested. And I mean, of course, there's always the chance that it's just bullshit. But I think that
comes a point, yeah.
Yeah, I think that you can kind of get a sense where it's like, if they're going out of their way to do that and verify the third party that did test it, is probably going to be a safe bet.
Yeah. So that's first.
Yeah.
Second red flag or green flag, but this one is a red, is to look out for proprietary blends.
Yeah.
Or like any type of blend matrix, proprietary matrix, homemade matrix, any type of insinuation of a blend. And the proprietary blend is what you'll see most often, but there's a few other names for it that fall in that category.
Essentially, what that means is this company is claiming that they don't want to give their trade secrets.
Yes, it's like a secret recipe.
Their secret recipe, so therefore they're able to protect having to reveal what's actually in it by saying it's proprietary, as if they disclose it, then that might harm them because their competitors know their secret.
And the blend is because what that means is that they can say, oh, ingredient X is the effective ingredient. It's going to do all these things. But it's in this proprietary blend that has 12 other things in it. Mm-hmm. And what that means is that they'll say, okay, so there's 2,000 milligrams or 2 grams of this proprietary blend in the supplement. And that main ingredient that they're really hyping is in there, but you don't know to what quantity.
Right.
You don't know what quantity any of the ingredients are.
Because it's proprietary.
So there's a veil.
If you knew, then their competitor could steal it and run them out of business.
And very often, I think what they're hoping is that you look at 2,000 milligrams and you start to associate that with the active ingredients and just that, like, oh, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's 2 grams. That's a lot. But you don't know. It could literally be all the cheapest ingredient.
Totally.
And then just like
and it usually is.
Yeah.
It usually is.
So proprietary blends is one of the things to watch out for. Now, I'm not going to say that every supplement that has proprietary blend on it is bullshit. Unfortunately, I think there are supplements that do have the active ingredients in there and do have an effect. But fundamentally, if you were to really put it through the proper filter, you'd want to stay away from anything that has a proprietary blend. Mm-hmm. It's just an easy.
It's just such an easy cover to put more of the cheaper stuff and less of the expensive stuff, and it just so happens that the expensive stuff in the supplement is kind of the one that you want anyways, and you just have no clue. And this is kind of leads us into the idea that dosage matters.
Correct.
Like dosage is the only reason why we take a supplement is because there is a threshold, there is a minimum effective dose.
Yes.
For anything below that, whatever the supplement we're talking about, whether it's performance enhancing or you name it, is null. It doesn't do anything to you.
Yep.
Let's just take an easy one like creatine. B vitamins, anything, name your thing, right? Like there is a minimum effective dose where once you hit it, you get all the benefits of it. But when you do a proprietary blend and it has the ingredient in there, but it's got and a lot of times I'll notice these companies, it's almost like they try to lose you in just all of their ingredients.
Well, yeah, all those.
Proprietary blend of like 20 different things.
Yes, of course. They're all like good ingredients. Like if you're in the supplement world, you start to see the common names, and all of a sudden you're reading like, oh, and it's got broccoli powder, and it's got the black pepper extract, and it's not this and it's not that, but that active ingredient, and it's a good point. So there's a company that we no affiliation with, but I have a lot of respect for, and they're called Transparent Labs. Yeah. And if you'd imagine by the name, they are basically swimming against stream and being transparent about everything. And one of their big things is that they do not have proprietary blends. They list every ingredient in whatever supplement they're offering in the exact dosage. The second thing is that they only include effective dosages, as been proven by studies, in their ingredient or in their supplement. And so it's really interesting because they have these wild commercials, and they'll show, one of the things they'll do is they'll show like the pre-workout scoop of any competitor, which is that like tiny little scoop that we all kind of know.
It's like 2-3 milligrams.
Yeah, like maybe a half a teaspoon kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then they show their pre-workout scoop, and it looks almost closer to a protein scoop.
Yeah.
Which is much larger.
Like 20 grams.
Yeah, and the reason for that is they're like, yes, nitric oxide has increases in capillary dilation and therefore muscle pump and this and that and all these active ingredients which are in every pre-workout, but the effective dose is like 1.5 grams, which would be more than just a little scoop in the first place. And so their whole thing is that like if you're actually looking to get the effective doses of these ingredients as done by science and studies, this is what your scoop is going to look like.
Right.
And so just like that alone, you just see how much bullshit is out there in a lot of ways. And it's not to say that there's not a ton of caffeine in those other pre-workouts and you don't feel something, but that fundamentally, that's a good company, I think, that represents, just from that example of the protein scoop, how wildly swinging it is, and to the point that there is a dose that does matter.
I mean, you can squeeze 200 milligrams of caffeine into a tiny little capsule, so yeah, that's pretty much what you're getting when you get those tiny little pre-workout scoops that are proprietary blends that have all these things. It's actually not. It's probably very trace amounts, as they would say, of the thing that you actually want, and mainly just caffeine because it's cheap and it hits you hard and you don't know the difference. But yeah, but Transparent Labs is also probably 2 or 3 times the price of some $15 pre-workout on Amazon, right?
Because the amount of ingredient that's actually in there is that much more.
Right.
I mean, it almost has to be, right?
Totally.
It's like, what are you going to do?
The funny thing is like, okay, you're browsing Amazon, you're looking at all these different options. You have the pre-workout that's $10.
Right.
And you have the pre-workout that's $40. And you're like, well, this one got good reviews, I'll just get that one. The irony is that in an effort to be a smart shopper, you actually just paid $10 for $2 worth of caffeine.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So,
I mean, it is rough. There's a company that I trust, and they're very about that. What they have is what they have. Like that, if you get what you get from them, that's what you're gonna get. And I think they're called Pure. It's blue with white. Again, no affiliation, no sponsorship. And I always go and I look at their supplements, and hot damn if they ain't like 50% more or 30% more than every other supplement. And I think there's some component of a name brand because they've built themselves as a brand at this point. And so obviously I think you pay for branding without question. But I think the other reason that they are more expensive is because they are legitimately selling what they say they're selling. And I do believe them. I think they do third-party testing and all that stuff. And so it's just like you said, it's like you can kind of scoff at it and be like, oh, let me shop around for something cheaper. Or you can just like maybe pay a little bit more and know that you're getting what you pay for.
It's like, listen, you're spending money or you're wasting money. Mm-hmm. So you can spend money on something like that's 2 or 3 times the price and actually get the thing that you want. Right. Or you can waste money trying to, because you're cheap, and get a $10 or $15 bottle of shit. You have no clue what's in there, and then probably not even use it. It probably just sits in the top of your cupboard until it expires because it didn't really do anything for you or whatever. And so it's like you can, and I'm guilty of this. You just continue to do that, make that decision instead of just doing it right the first time.
Yep.
Getting the damn thing you want and all the benefits of it, and is it worth an extra $20 or $30? I would say yes, probably.
I'd say so. In the end, yeah.
So so that's sort of like an overview of the industry. Some things to look for and to look out for proprietary blends. You want to make sure that it's everything's listed, it's transparent, and that it's third-party tested, right?
Yes.
So lab tested is kind of like a food saying organic. What does that even fucking mean? You want to see third-party tested, and you want to be able to look at what they actually have in there. And if it's too cheap and too good to be true, it probably is. Yeah, depending on what you're trying to buy. If it's vitamins, those are cheap. If it's like actual like performance-enhancing supplements, then those tend to be a little bit more expensive. But yeah, and then just keep in mind there are no regulatory laws. It's the Wild West. If I say that it is and I can package it and sell it, then...
And there are a lot, like just because something is natural doesn't mean it's not like psychoactive, meaning like there are a lot of plants that have things that affect you. So like St. John's wort is one of them. It absolutely participates with your brain chemistry and neurology, and like valerian root's another one.
Yep.
So it's like, that's another thing to consider, is that I think sometimes because it's natural or it's plant derived, we think it's just absolutely safe or won't have any drug interactions or anything like that. And I think just making sure that there is a little research done. I'll disclaimer that if you're going to take any type of supplement, it's a good thing to check in with your doctor. But I would also just do a little research and just make sure that if you're choosing to take anything, are there any contraindications? Meaning, like, are there any conflicts that might come with that supplement? Because somebody might say, oh, St. John wort is supposed to improve your mood. That's because it actually does have compounds that are active, and that might actually interfere with your SSRI or depressive medication or some other medication that you might be on. So I think it's just important to keep in mind that just because they're supplements, they're not benign. And just because it's just a plant or it's natural, I think we often, it's not a drug, it's not a prescription, so it won't matter if I take this plant. It's natural, it's whatever, it's not going to do anything. So I just have to think, I just want to put that out there just for the safety of anybody listening, is to just make sure, do a little research. If you're taking like vitamin D, I wouldn't worry too much about it. But at the same time,
there are things that dosage matters less, where as far as like how much you're taking, like vitamin D, for example. But there's some things that can
just in general, do a little research, especially if it's something new or it's a random new plant. I think most of the time things are generally safe for the most part. I don't think there are many supplements out there that are really going to do you wrong in a serious way. But always
and thankfully, we live in an era where everything's reviewed.
Yes,
so
that's true.
If something's out there that is not good, it's gonna get panned.
Yes.
You've seen it where you looked up something on Google or whatever, or Amazon, and it's got like 3 out of 5 stars, and you're just like, nah.
Yep.
I ain't doing that.
Nuh-uh.
But anyway, so okay, now let's chat a little bit about what supplements we would recommend, just kind of for anybody. And
Yes.
I think we can rank these as like, just a baseline, kind of like priority list, and then we can go a little bit further down that rabbit hole on if you really want to kind of get more tip of the iceberg type stuff.
Yes.
What supplements we would recommend. for that. So
I would look at it as essential. I do think that there are certain vitamins or supplements that people can take that would be somewhat essential based on modern lifestyle and or the benefit and the cost. So I think that that's just the way I see it.
So, all right, I'll start.
Go for it.
So these are the ones that I'm actually currently taking now, or at least I, throughout the year, cycle in and out of.
Okay.
I try to keep it minimal. I think that it's like anything in life. I think that we need to know what we're capable of by good lifestyle practices.
Yes.
And that supplements are just as they're called. They're a supplement, not the main. And so
I would agree with that.
No amount of exercise supplements or vitamins is going to fix just a shitty lifestyle.
No, of course not.
So that's always the first thing.
And I think food too, especially for vitamins and minerals, that like there are food sources available, and if we did really eat a very diverse array of foods and plants and these seeds and leafy greens, that we would probably be pretty covered. But a lot of us don't, and I think that some things could probably be supplemented.
Yeah. So first one, I think I've been on creatine for 10 years straight now, maybe longer. So I think that that's, especially if you train and you have any interest in strength. But honestly, what's interesting about creatine is that it's over the counter. It's the safest one. It's the one that everyone does. It doesn't take a lot to get the minimum effective dose, but it's not just sports performance. It like improves cognitive ability. There's like all kinds of crazy research coming in, like for elderly people, like it can help stave off degenerative diseases. There was a whisper at one point about it affecting your kidneys. They've actually since debunked that.
Yes. And
so now they're finding that it's hard to show, it's hard to prove that it isn't pretty damn effective and safe across the board. And for those who don't know, creatine is something that we tend to produce internally, but we also get through red meat mainly.
Primarily, but it's in some other things. But
we release like 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams a day internally, and then we can eat up to another 3 or 4 through red meat, depending on how much you eat in a day. But if you just supplement this little thing, a little tiny teaspoon, 5 milligrams of it,
5 grams.
10?
5 grams.
5 grams. 5 grams, yes. Man, it really, what it does, and so to kind of make a long story short, we have different energy pathways in our body. One of them is the creatine phosphate pathway. As you train, we've all, hopefully anybody that's listening has gotten to that point where you've at least done a set of push-ups and you felt the burn at the end, and then all of a sudden you couldn't do anymore. But maybe a minute later, all of a sudden, you can do a few more. Because what happened essentially is you depleted your body of its energy currency called ATP. I'll let you guys Google that on your own. The ATP turns into, which is a triphosphate, turns into a diphosphate, but the creatine then cycles back around, completes that, turns it back into a triphosphate, and now you have ATP back into your muscle tissue, and you can now perform another set. ATP is the readily available energy currency in your body. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry for my dog, if you guys can hear her. She knows we're here talking. She can't stand it. Anyways, but when you supplement creatine, it saturates your muscles. You have more, you have an abundance of this stuff. And now you can do that same set of push-ups, maybe get a few more reps out of it, and maybe instead of 2 or 3 minutes to recover, 90 seconds later, you're back in action. And so it is truly a performance-enhancing supplement. Over-the-counter, safe, very minimal, none, as far as I know, basically no side effects.
Yeah, pretty much none.
I mean, maybe just a little gassy if you're just starting for the first time.
Yeah, you can have a little rudder retention if you really overdo it. Maybe a little upset stomach, but that's pretty rare. But it is pretty much the only performance-enhancing supplement.
Yeah.
For the fact, like just factually done. There's really no reason not to take it if you're training, and to the point that there's probably reasons to take it otherwise. But anybody who's exercising, any type of athlete, in any capacity, I think would benefit from taking creatine. It's just plain and simple.
Ethan?
I do take it.
Every day?
Yeah, pretty much. You have to take it every day.
Yeah. How long have you been taking it?
I cycle on and off. I haven't taken it consistently for years, but I mean, I've had a bag of creatine in my cupboard for over a decade.
Yeah.
It goes on and off. The main thing, I think, to just remind everybody is that you do have to take it every day. Mm-hmm. So the idea is that you eventually saturate your cells with the creatine, and in order to do that, you just have to do it every day. It's not a lot. You only need to take creatine monohydrate. There's a lot of fancy creatine derivatives and people selling capsules that are crazy expensive, and all that is just hoopla.
Yep.
You can go to any any bulk supplements or any type of other supplement company that sells things in bulk. You can get a giant bag for under $10 that'll last you forever.
Yeah.
Creatine monohydrate, 5 grams a day. There's always a thing too of like the saturation phase, and it doesn't really matter. So you can take 10 or 20 grams for a week to saturate your muscles quicker. But if you also just took the 5 grams every day consistently, it might take a week longer, but the saturation will occur.
Yep.
So either way, you have to take it every day. Take the 5 grams every day. Don't overthink it.
Yep. Yeah, so that's a big one. And then the next one for me, at least, is just I do a multivitamin, I do omega-3, and then in the winter I'll supplement a D3.
Yes.
In the summer I tend to I'm outside a lot. I feel like I'm getting the real stuff. And then I also will cycle electrolytes depending on what the day calls for. Like if it's like we went to Disneyland and we walked in the sun for 10 hours, so I had an electrolyte packet, for example, but I don't do it every day. Maybe I should, but those are like the main ones for me. And then protein powder, if we want to call that a supplement. So creatine, multi, omega, D3 during the winter, and then like an electrolyte occasionally.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
It's my stack.
That's the stack. Well, I got a pretty much similar stack, and then I also wanted to talk about why they're important too. And, it's one of those things that I think helping people understand. One of them that I would include, or that I do take every day, is magnesium.
Yeah.
Magnesium. And so it's like, the thing about it is that, again, always looking to, if you can get these vitamins and or minerals from food sources, that's always going to be great. There's no questions asked. There's whole conversations about these micronutrients. So we always are talking about macronutrients. We're talking about micronutrients. These are nutrients that tend to have no caloric value or no energy value, but are vital to the body, and we would not survive without them. And they talk about these micronutrients being available in a food matrix, and that's a whole conversation, but they talk about how your body's ability to recognize, assimilate, and utilize these micronutrients because they're in a food matrix. I heard similar conversations, for example, about the fruit sugars like fructose. Fructose has its own effects of the body compared to other sugar, but they talk about that because it's in a food matrix, it doesn't have the same negative consequences if you were to just eat straight fructose, and it's outside of just the fiber. So it's a whole conversation. It's interesting. Kind of gets a little bit more into that whole naturalist component of things. But for me, magnesium is one of them. And it's incredible because out of all the minerals, magnesium is probably used in, I think, over 900 processes in the body.
Yeah.
It's just, so basically it helps with enzymic reactions. And enzymes are just doing all types of things in our body everywhere, from digestion to cell regeneration to all types of stuff. And it's also essential for making sure that your bones are in good capacity, basically, right? So it's one of those things that without magnesium, vitamin D, calcium can't do its thing.
I was just going to say, isn't magnesium kind of like the gateway for calcium to actually assimilate into our body?
Yes, pretty much, yeah. That it's one of those things that it's like that for so many reactions. It's good for neural health and regenerating nerve cells, muscle tissue. I mean, I got a whole list right here, but basically muscle and nerve function, helps regulate your blood pressure, blood sugar control, energy production, protein synthesis, bone density, and DNA repair.
Oh, just DNA repair.
Just a DNA repair.
No big deal.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that could you get enough magnesium from your food? Probably. I think you'd have to
be deliberate though, because it's so hard to find. Even like magnesium supplements, it's amazing how little is actually in there.
In there, yes.
Like Tanya gets one that from Whole Foods, which is like this fancy schmancy magnesium sort of dropper, and I look at it, and even like an entire dose is only like 20% of your daily recommended amount. So it's hard to get enough of it. Like you'd really have to really actively search and try to get 100% of your daily recommended dose.
It's wild, yeah. One of the things I want to make sure that the folks out there understand is that there's different forms of magnesium, and their bioavailability, aka how well your body can utilize, assimilate them, absorb them, is very different. And so magnesium glycinate is kind of the star of the show. It's not that expensive, and I think it has a 70% or higher bioavailability. This is compared to magnesium oxide, which is the cheapest and most common form of magnesium. And guess how much bioavailability is in magnesium oxide, which is going to be in every fucking multivitamin.
Like the percentage?
Yes, like what percentage? So meaning if you took 100% of your daily value of magnesium in magnesium oxide, how much?
10%.
4.
Oh, Jesus.
4 fucking percent.
And the funny thing is okay, so magnesium oxide is probably what's in all the shit.
Every kind of cheapest,
You
cheap,
think
common.
you're getting 100% of your daily value, but only 4% of that is even so in that actual vitamin, it might only be it might only say you have 20. This is 25% of your daily value of magnesium, but of that, only 4% of that is being assimilated.
So you're getting like a 0.5%, a quarter,
yeah.
like
So
you'd
be better off not even taking it.
And that's to say that once the magnesium is actually in and assimilated, that it just does everything perfectly, because that's just not how the body works. It's not like it utilizes every molecule that comes into it with just 100% efficiency. So magnesium is one of those ones that I think it's so vital. It can calm you if you're stressed. If you have trouble sleeping, you can take a high dose of magnesium at night, and it can help you sleep. It's completely not addictive. So for me, I take a magnesium glycinate supplement every day. There are other ones like magnesium citrate and other ones that have high bioavailability. Some can give you the runs. They can cause diarrhea in full doses. Glycinate will not. So it's another one. That's why glycinate has kind of risen to be the...
Go for the good stuff.
Go for the good stuff.
Don't be
It's really
cheap.
not that expensive.
Yeah.
It's really not that expensive.
Yeah.
So, I take 50% every day. I don't take the full dose that they recommend just because...
Just imagine the kind of man you'd be if you took 100%.
I know, I can. That would be wild. So, yeah, so really, really behind magnesium. All about it.
For sure.
Yep.
I need to get better at that. Tanya's really good. She does a couple droplets in her morning water every day. She got on the tip, and I just need to get on the wagon too.
Yeah,
I know all these things. I'm like, oh, God, that's right.
Well, the list of things to do is infinite.
God, I know.
It
It can really turn into like you open up your cupboard and it's just like.
I mean, it's literally I have 2 shelves with shelving in the shelves, all just supplements.
Yeah.
This is great.
Totally.
I gotta love it. It's kind of fun.
Okay, cool. What else do you take?
So the vitamin D is another one I think is essential. And so one of the things the value of vitamin D is huge. It's one of the things that it regulates so many cellular functions. It's anti-inflammatory. It's an antioxidant. It's a neuroprotective, so it protects your brain cells. Again, I think it's one of those things that because it regulates so many cellular functions in the body and muscle function and brain cell activity, all this stuff, it's just a really important one. And
for sure,
there's the truth that we do make it, and I've heard all types of different things, right? So it's a fat-soluble vitamin, so that means that it's stored in our fat tissue. And so I've heard some people, I haven't looked into it, I was having trouble finding any conclusive research, that by getting a certain amount of sun and it being stored in your fat, that you're good for a while. So let's say you got a good dose of sun.
Yeah.
Because it's getting produced inside of you, then it gets stored in your fat, that obviously you're going to metabolize your fat over time so that you get this kind of consistent release of vitamin D. I think the thing to keep in mind, though, is that there's a lot of variabilities to vitamin D production from sun. So it's going to be like proximity to the equator, what time of year it is, what time of day it is, your genetics. So not everybody is as efficient at converting sunlight into vitamin D.
For sure. Like the darker skin, that people don't absorb as much as lighter skin.
Yes, exactly. So your
Obviously, we
melanin
get burned.
content is going to make a big difference. And then there's also like the time of day. So like obviously noon is going to be a much more potent time than like say 4 p.m. Also like the summer is much more potent. And so I've read crazy statistics that like winter sun is actually really bad at producing vitamin D compared to like summer sun. And so I do think getting it from the sun is the way to go. And that's the way. But I also think it's so important that taking a nice little dose every day isn't going to hurt you. There are 2 forms of vitamin D. The most common one you're ever going to supplement is vitamin D3.
Yeah.
And that's just the more bioavailable and readily available vitamin D. Here's the caveat that I'm going to say, though, is that if you are going to take a vitamin D3 supplement, to make sure it has K2 in it, vitamin K2, a little less known. And the reason for that is that basically the K2 ensures that calcium is absorbed easily, which we know vitamin D and calcium and magnesium have this little interplay. But it also helps to make sure that it reaches the bone mass while preventing arterial calcification.
Oh, interesting.
So basically the K2 is kind of like this little like helper, like it's almost like that person shuttling you at the airport. It's like, let's get you where you need to go. And because it's just not free floating, it has less effects like the arterial calcification. So
Interesting.
basically, it helps calcium get to where it needs to be. So you can easily get it. If you do get a vitamin D supplement, just get a vitamin D3 K2 supplement. They're not much more expensive. So that would just be a little caveat there.
For
that I
sure.
would add.
That's a good tip. Yeah. And to your point, like if you live in a place where there's not much sun, only a couple months a year, or you're constantly indoors, it's only going to benefit you. Didn't they cure rickets from
Yes.
giving kids
Yes.
vitamin D3?
I didn't include in my list all of like, I tried to look at only the positives, but it's amazing. But yes, rickets is one of the things that they did.
Yeah,
cure.
it was like all these people were deficient in vitamin D, and they were like developing all these diseases, and then lo and behold, just supplementing that like basically cured it.
Yep.
So super important for your immune system and just functioning as a healthy person. But like I said, I supplement it in the winter months when it's cloudy and cold and you're all bundled up and you're just not outside. It makes a lot of sense for me. Right now it's getting into spring and summer. Days are nice and sunny. I'm out every day walking the dogs for 20 or 30 minutes, and I'm not even taking my shirt off.
Not yet.
You know what I mean? But in that case, I'm like, I'm probably pretty good.
Yeah, I haven't been getting outside as much as I need to, and I don't have dogs, so
Yeah,
it's one of
dogs,
the reasons
man.
where they're great. It's great.
Yeah, they bark, but other than that, they're great. So definitely get the D3
I
going.
think that's a huge one.
Yep,
The omega-3s.
omega-3s.
Now, this is one I slack on. I wane in and out just because I forget to get more. It's just one of those ones. But again, undeniably so fucking important.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's one of those things. So, right, like there's a phospholipid layer that is basically what the outside of a cell is comprised of. And that omega-3s, along with other omegas, but omega-3s are some of the building block components of the outside of this cell membrane. And so basically, if you don't have enough, then these cell membranes just aren't as well built. And they basically, there's something about the ability for the cell membrane to take on nutrients into the cell that having an ample amount of omega-3 helps with, as I understand it. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And there's also some like neuroplasticity
Yes,
going on with
that's
omega-3.
exactly right.
Where it helps you just stay a little bit more, keeps your brain a little bit more supple, I guess. Yeah.
It's what do I call it? But it has so many other things too, like blood. It's like it helps regulate blood clotting, the contraction and relaxation of the arterial walls, which we know is going to help with stroke and heart disease. So it's going to help with all that, and just also it's crazy, like regulate genetic function. It's very interesting. There's just so many I was reading. It's like all types of things.
When you dig into these vitamins and what they do, it's amazing like how much shit they assist in.
It's wild. I mean, that's why I think, and I mean, right here, it's like, due to the effects of the omega-3 fats, this is from a study that can help prevent heart disease and stroke, may help control lupus, eczema, rheumatoid arthritis, and may also play protective roles in cancer and other conditions.
Yeah.
And that was straight out of a quality study, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
And I think the issue is that we don't eat enough fish or marine life or seaweed and things like that. So obviously we know that fish is infamous for having omega-3s in it, but like we don't eat, I think they want you to do 2 servings or 3 a week of fish, and specifically eat like if how salmon has that like dark meat, the like actual brown meat.
Yeah, that's where it's at.
That's where it's at. So when we're eating these like clean fillets, it's not that there's no omega-3 in there, but it's that very almost gamey or stronger flavor.
Yeah.
Sardines.
I've been throwing a can of sardines with my dog's food.
Yeah.
Every week.
Smart.
And I just looked at the can of it, and it was like an insane amount of omegas.
It's crazy, yeah.
Yeah, it was like way more than a supplement would have. It was just like, holy shit.
The sardines. So it's not the same. So that's one of those ones I think we can eat omega-3s much easier than other foods. Yeah. Totally. But I think...
Or just take the supplement.
And then I think, for me, it's like I like to kick it off with actually cod liver oil.
Oh, yeah.
Because that has animal-based vitamin A. Which is different. And so, so you look at a bag of carrots and it says beta-carotene as vitamin A, but beta-carotene is not really vitamin A. It's a precursor to vitamin A. Once it gets in your body converts it to vitamin A. But the difference is that not everybody has, hence genetic variants of human beings, the same efficacy of that conversion rate. So you could eat 100% of beta-carotene to equal 100% of vitamin A, but only convert 30% of that when it's in your body. Whereas
magnesium conundrum.
Yeah, but the animal-based vitamin A is just assimilated. It's basically the already actual end product as a fat-soluble vitamin. So I like to take cod liver oil because it does a thing. Oh, and to keep in mind also, just for people to understand, that it's the EPA and DHA that you want.
Yeah.
I think there's APA is the third one. But basically there's 3 kinds of omega-3s, and all the studies have pretty much shown that it's the EPA and DHA are the ones that...
And you want a higher dosage of the DHA.
I believe so.
Yeah. And that can get a little confusing. We're going to summarize all this for you guys. I know we're kind of really going deep into like specific vitamins and stuff. So we'll give like our ultimate sort of, if you had to pick a handful of these to take on a daily basis, we'll go over that here in a sec. We're just kind of laying out some of the bigger ones that we would take and that we actually find necessary and beneficial.
Yeah, I think, why I'm diving into them is that people understand why they're so important.
Totally.
Because these are all ones that are on, for me, both of our absolute lists, or the foundation list.
Yep.
For me, for sure, electrolytes too.
Electrolytes are huge.
They're huge. Basically electrolytes refer to like a mineral that when it goes in the water, it gets an electric charge. I think for me, the main thing to think about is our nervous system is an electric system. It runs off of sodium action, sodium ion potential, aka a little electrical current going through the nerve.
Yeah.
And so when we're depleted of those, our nerve function doesn't work very well.
And that can translate to just cramping, headache, fatigue,
brain fog,
nausea, brain fog,
Yeah.
vomiting in some extreme cases.
Yep, absolutely.
Usually associated with like dehydration a lot of the time. You got to remember that water and sodium need to be in balance. And sodium is probably the most essential electrolyte that
Without
most people
question.
we're familiar with. But we got potassium, magnesium, manganese.
Manganese is another one.
There's a whole slew of them, but but sodium is just so crucial, and especially if you're exercising, especially if you're you have to maintain that sodium water balance. If you just drink water and you're like, I think one of the big mistakes is people are like think that sodium is bad, so they go super low sodium.
Yes.
But then they're drinking a gallon of water a day.
They're drinking their distilled water, which is just completely empty water.
Yeah, they're just pissing clear, and they're cramping, they're fatigued, they kind of got like brain fog. What's happening is because you're overhydrated. There's just, or I should say, you're not, the water's not sticking.
Yes, totally.
And so that sodium just kind of creates like a barrier that retains the hydration inside of your cells. So
yes.
A good electrolyte, not necessarily every day, although you could, but a couple times a week just kind of helps keep that sodium mineral balance.
Yeah.
So you maintain the hydration in your cells. You're not just drinking water and then pissing it straight out.
Yeah, you can actually leach. So if you drink distilled water, which is like, we're just going to call it completely empty water, and you just like chug it, you can actually pull minerals out of your body. So outside of just salt, you can actually overdrink water to such a degree that you pull the water out. And if you think about like spring water, you ever look on the back of a bottle and it's like, tested for these amounts of the minerals. It's like the main reason that spring water can be alkaline is because of its minerality, and that a lot of time as it's filtering through the rocks and this and that, it picks up minerals. And so your water normally has minerals in it, but I think nowadays we're drinking so much filtered water that's basically completely devoid of anything. Could be really good for pulling stuff out of you. Could be good for, quote, detoxing, even though it's not real, but in that capacity.
Right.
That idea.
Detoxing from minerals.
Exactly. But yeah, the electrolytes, I take an electrolyte supplement every day.
Nice.
I just even if it's not the full dose, I just like knowing that minerals are in there. And it's especially important if you're like a super sweater. Like if you're playing sports consistently, or you work some type of job where you're sweating it out in the sun.
Yeah.
I think you'd be amazed. So many times, myself included, where people are just not feeling great, camping at a music festival, on a hike. And man, you just like you were saying, you just can't figure it out. And as soon as you drink the electrolytes, you're just like,
oh,
I can like see again. I'm like,
totally.
What is
especially if
going
you're
on?
having a few drinks.
Oh, especially
alcohol,
if you're having a few drinks.
anything, coffee, alcohol, all these are diuretics. You're pulling, they're leaching minerals from your body.
And I'm thinking, like, everybody drinks coffee, really.
Right, but I'm saying,
to
your point, imagine like a construction guy who just drinks like a Stanley thermos of coffee.
Yes.
Drinks a soda, doesn't really drink much water, maybe has a few beers at night, sweating all day at work, maybe a couple glasses of water here and there, but like that would be like a prime candidate. But anybody who's active needs to be on a electrolyte.
I think so. I think it's just one of those things. It's.
Yeah. And then last but not least, I would say like if we wanted to really go for it, ashwagandha I think is probably the most interesting sort of like adaptogen.
So are we saying as an everyday kind of thing, or are you looking at?
I think it could be in the arsenal. I think
Yeah.
that you could cycle on it for 4 or 8 weeks at a time. But I would say like ashwagandha, man, it's hard to find any reason not to. It really looks like a really good way to manage stress,
Right.
manage cortisol, protect your brain against cognitive diseases. They're saying that it aids in, it can even help increase sperm count in men.
Yep.
So many positive attributes, raising testosterone. They did a study over 8 weeks with a control group and a placebo, and they had them all doing the same exercise training routine for 8 weeks, and the placebo group, or I should say the ashwagandha group, who did, I think it was 600 milligrams, so it was a dose.
Yeah, that's
But that seems to be what they say is like you need to kind of go there with it. And I think a lot of the stuff you're going to buy is like a couple hundred milligrams. But like 500 to 600 is like what I'm finding online to be like the recommended dose to really see these benefits. So, but anyways, they were saying like the control group that took the ashwagandha 600 milligrams a day for 8 weeks under the same weight training program as the placebo group had more strength gains and more muscle mass.
I mean, there it is.
Crazy, right?
You know, but before, so we're kind of getting to say there's actually one more nutrient that I would say is a more mainstay that I think people would benefit from, and that's B12.
Oh yeah, bees for sure. Yeah.
B12, because I mean, one, obviously it's a major concern if you're a vegetarian, or it's not to say that there are plenty of B12, but I think that the bees are super important.
Yeah.
And B12 in particular, and there's a caveat again, because what I'm trying to let the people know is that you want to get methylated B12, or the compound is called methylcobalamin.
Methylcobalamin.
Versus the other one is cyanocobalamin is the most common. So if you look at like a 5-hour energy, it'll be the cyano versus
Cheap
the methyl.
shit.
Yeah, it's the cheap shit. Now, it doesn't mean it doesn't have an effect. Basically what has to happen is that your body then has to methylate it itself. And so again, some will be lost in the process. Some people have different efficiencies. But basically when it's methylated, it becomes like an active form of the vitamin. And without it being methylated, it's not. And so you can just buy a methylated B vitamin. Some people have talked to me about methylation is also like a little, it's almost like a dress stamp on the molecule. And that your ability to methylate ranges very crazy different from person to person.
Like a person's body's ability to
methylate things. Yeah, so you can methylate tons of things. There's methylation with DNA. There's methylation with all types of processes and things in our body. And so I actually heard, I have yet to look into this, but I heard somebody say that if you eat asparagus and your pee smells like asparagus, you don't methylate well. Because basically what's happening is that there's compounds in the asparagus that aren't getting methylated, and that methylation is what's kind of telling them where to go. And so this, because they're not being methylated, you ended up peeing them out, and your urine smells like the asparagus. And so it's wild. Like apparently I had a buddy, Brian's, Corey, his ex-wife. Apparently her pee would never smell after eating asparagus because she was good at methylation.
Interesting.
So I think it's just, even if you take a good form of B12 or a high dose, it doesn't necessarily mean. It goes back to the vitamin A and the conversion of beta-carotene, right? Like there's so many variables and from genetic differences in people. So if you're going to take a B12 supplement, it's super cheap. Just get a methylated B12.
Yeah.
And B12 is just super important for everything.
For sure.
Just, energy production and vision and nerve and liver and just, it's one of those things that's why you see all the B12 shots everywhere.
Yeah.
Get your butt stuck with the B12.
So, in summary, supplements that we find most valuable, performance stuff, good old caffeine would be probably your easiest go-to, but creatine sort of like as a staple, a daily, put that muscle on,
without
cognitive
question.
benefits.
If you're exercising, use creatine.
And then a protein powder, if you want to consider that.
Protein powder for sure, 100%. Hit your protein goals without a lot of calories.
And then from more of like a micronutrient, daily sort of go-to that Ethan and I both take, omega-3s.
Unquestionable.
D3s.
Unquestionable.
And then probably would benefit you to do an electrolyte too as well.
And then magnesium.
And then the magnesium, right. So But search out for the magnesium
glycinate. Yeah,
Make sure it says that.
GLYCINATE.
And then the B's need to be the
methylated, at least for the B12. Yeah, and that's.
But if you search out a really good multi, it would if they do methylate their B's in the multi, they're gonna say it on the package. So
they'll say it. Well, not always. I mean, you'd be surprised. Like some people just have a methylated B12 because I think they know what they're talking about. But most B's are gonna not be methylated. Like I would say 80% that I've looked at over time don't have it. And if you search like methylated B12 multivitamin, you'll obviously have it.
Yeah, maybe that'd be your best.
That's probably your best.
Just go right for that.
Yeah, I have a methylated B12 complex. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, perfect.
It's got it all in there, high doses. It's good stuff.
And then if you want to go more tip of the iceberg and you want to experiment, I would definitely recommend ashwagandha.
Ashwagandha's huge. Astragalus. So these are all kind of called adaptogens, and as the name implies, they're just like they help you adapt. They basically help you deal with adapting to stress and dealing with stress. And I know it's a very broad spectrum, but a good example would be like altitude. I think so. Maca root powder is another one I can get behind. I think, and all of these are kind of generally supposed to increase like your energy, your mood, libido. But there's an old tale. I think it was in South America, and it was like when they basically Ecuadorians were bringing cattle in or something like that, and the cattle were really struggling because they weren't used to the altitude. And then all of a sudden, the cattle were like just chugging along and doing great and having no issue. And they started paying attention and they were eating the maca plant. And then apparently that was one of the first like examples of maca's ability to be adaptogenic.
It's some hardcore science right there.
Yeah, it's very hardcore science. That's that peer-reviewed, double-controlled study. Yeah. But I mean, there are more. I have right here like a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study on maca.
Yeah.
And basically,
no doubt.
And it basically came back saying that like the increased mood, increased energy, increased libido, and just.
Some good shit.
It's good stuff.
That can be a lot for a lot of folks to, get to like, okay, I don't do any of this. Let me just get everything.
No, of course.
But definitely like some of the big ones, go after the high quality multi with the methylated Bs and see if it has a good dose of the proper amount, or at least the proper kind of magnesium, or just get a separate one.
Yep.
If you're bundled up and it's cold most of the time, then get on the D3. If you're not outside, D3s.
Yep.
If you train at all and you're exercising your body and you're sweating, creatine, electrolytes.
Yep.
It's only going to serve you. It's going to keep your body hydrated and keep you recovering, keep your muscles contracting. And then ashwagandha, maca, all that's wonderful.
The bees.
Those are adaptogens.
Yeah.
So.
And that's the thing. It's like what I'll say is like there's a wild world of crazy plants out there.
Right,
and
totally.
I think a lot of them do have a lot of benefit, within the whole conversation of the wild, wild west, and if you're getting what you're getting. But I do think there are adaptogens. Like I had a good friend who had Lyme disease multiple times. He lives in Vermont.
Jeez.
And basically, when I started telling him about adaptogenic mushrooms, reishi, lion's mane, chaga, he started to drink a tea every day, and he had done everything to help. And technically, you can never get rid of Lyme disease. But when he started to consistently drink a homemade adaptogenic tea brew every day, he said it helped him more than anything else. Any medication he did, anything. Like for him, he's like, it saved my life. Like he was like, he had tremors and couldn't eat and sweats. And so, again, anecdotal, but he says it saved his life. So I think that there are a lot of potent, and there's science behind it too. Like lion's mane has been shown to regenerate nerve cells and myelin sheaths.
That's the big thing is the common thing you see with ashwagandha, matcha, lion's mane, maca, and matcha is actually pretty good too.
Matcha is tasty.
These adaptogens, the common thing that they do is it's like nerve repair.
Yeah.
A lot of them are like protecting your nerve cells, staving off degenerative diseases, like helping like prevent Alzheimer's and shit like that. Those are kind of like the common things. So might not be bad. Might not be a bad idea.
Yeah, just something to check out if you're interested. Just knowing that they're out there and do your due diligence. But there's plants are cool.
Plants are cool, guys. We'll leave with that. Plants are cool.
Plants are cool.
But dosage matters. Don't get the cheap shit. Go the extra step.
Third party tested.
Ingredient
style.
There's no proprietary bullshit, but you're actually seeing what's in there. Do your due diligence. This is something that you're taking in your body potentially every day, potentially for years, if not the rest of your life. So it's worth the extra step. But
Agreed.
hope that helped everybody. Hope you learned a few things. I did. I think Ethan was a great resource here and really shed some great information. And maybe we'll do a follow-up episode here with some more specific stuff on each one of those.
Yeah, we can.
Because I feel like we had to cut it we had to just cut it because we can just go down the rabbit hole on
There's
each one
so
of these.
many. I mean, yeah, we just.
So,
That
could be cool to like pick a couple and just go deep on those.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that was episode 15. 15 weeks, baby.
That's that.
Coach's Corner, Justin, Ethan. We'll check you all next time. Peace.
Peace out.